All right, so this week we read Hobbes, the Leviathan, and then Locke's The Second Treaty. I'm just going to give you some of my thoughts, and then some of one of the difficulties I had with the reading, and then a couple questions. There's a couple things that I've noticed about the two authors. Obviously, there's a contrast here where Hobbes and Locke differ greatly. Hobbes, you can see that Hobbes believes that mankind desperately needs a sovereign ruler, and he's opposite because he talks about the monarchy being the best form of government. And so I think that this idea works in some sense, and some people disagree with me on this, but I think it works in some sense where you have a high form of government. It's just that single person. In the case where Jesus will rule in heaven, it'll be a whole lot easier than what we have in our current politics today. But the problem is so many times kings have failed, and we see that Hobbes sets up scripture as kind of the background for the rules and regulations and things like that. But even with that, we've already seen popes rise up in power and fall, do some horrible things throughout history. And so that's one of the things that I think kind of hurts Hobbes' idea. Obviously, even King David, who was one of the greatest kings, sent his best man off to go die on the front line so that he could take this man's wife. And so every person has their own desires and things they need, and so, or things they want, and that can ultimately be over what the intention of the law is. Well, in Locke's idea, he's got a great idea too, and it was really cool being able to see the building blocks of our government throughout his writing. And so what we have today, obviously it's been perverted a long ways from where Locke wrote it, but the foundation is pretty strong. He spoke of a government of the people, by the people, because all men are created equal. His idea of the natural law and the idea that the government should be built on those basic building blocks is a pretty neat idea. And we know what those basic building blocks are, the things that we're convicted of, the things that we know we shouldn't do, even before someone has to tell us not to do it. The problem with that is the definition of that natural law, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. It was his idea of life, liberty, and property is phenomenal to me. I think the idea of what a man works for is definitely what he's earned and what he should keep. And I think that's something that's lost. When you think about a piece of property where they want to build a highway, they just take it from you. Oh, we give you compensation, but it doesn't work that way. I've got a good friend of mine who had some property, and they put a road right through the middle of it, and it was his property, it was his family's property and his grandparents' property. And just kind of see that idea that this man's worked this farm, he's helped move it, and then they just put a road right through the middle of it. And so our government can literally do what they want to and get away with it. And so I think the idea that Locke had here was a great idea, and the thought of that, and then not to take more than you need, to be self-aware of others, and the idea of what that stands for. Very strong Christian principles: to love your neighbor enough to feed them, to clothe them, to give them a place to stay. I mean, we're to do that, and I think Locke was showing that in his governance. But we also need protection from those who don't listen, and so the idea that they had of forming government by the people, for the people, is a strong and great idea. All right, so we know that that's some of their differences. One of their common ideas between both of them that I really grasp from both, one of them is they both realize the idea that there has to be some level of government for protection and for the commonwealth. They do that by making laws and executing those laws. And both of them believe that in order to have that government, that you are going to lose some rights to gain your protection. So you're going to give up some of your freedoms in order to gain some of the protection the government would ask. All right, my difficulty, the thing that I struggle with the most, the idea of natural law is a very difficult subject. In both writings, we know that they're talking about scripture, we're talking about Yahweh and that type mentality. The problem is when people translate it for themselves, when they say, oh, we're one nation under God, or we have those basic principles. The problem is people don't have those basic principles. There is no basic. We do have right from wrong. We know right from wrong. But in the world we live in today, somebody's right is just what makes them feel good. It's not what's really true. There's no such thing as absolute truth anymore in this postmodern society that we live in. This is dangerous when you start talking about a building block on natural law. And so it's something I wanted to kind of think about or something I was thinking about as I was reading through this. If this was written in today's time, how difficult it would be in order to discuss natural law, and that it being the foundation of which the whole governing body is built. All right, a couple questions real quick. I agree with and love most of Locke's ideas. What happens when the majority becomes perverse and rejects the idea of natural law that is the basis or the foundations of Locke's concepts of government? All right, and then also Hobbes' idea of the sovereign choosing or intervening in private and public enterprise sounds a lot like communism. Do you think that if Hobbes had experienced communism, that he would state that it is a better form of government compared to monarchy? Why or why not? Thank y'all so much.